podcast for a Monday. Yours truly, Bob McCown, John Shannon.
Hello, Robert.
With us as well.
I'm surprised you took calls today after your football team.
What do you mean I took calls?
Well, you actually returned a couple of texts last night, probably after you threw your phone at the wall.
No, not really. I mean, I think, I think our guests will attest to this. After you've been a fan of a team that has been so inept for so long, any achievement is one that is revered, reveled in, absorbed. I didn't get frustrated at all. They played all right. I think Kansas City played like crap, but we'll get into all that today. A couple of guys who know all about this stuff. Scott RAAB joins us, the author now in New Jersey, but has written a lot about stuff from Cleveland, and Howard Simon of WGR in Buffalo. Mr. Simon, to you first. I assume you did a show this morning, and what was the sense? I assume people are elated, but is there any way they're overconfident now?
First off, if the show is about inept sports teams, I have no idea why you'd want me on from Buffalo. What are you talking about? I can't relate to any of this stuff. Yeah, it's weird. I think by this morning, the elated feeling wore off a little bit. They're definitely not overconfident. I'd say they're confident. You know, it used to be, honestly, I do think this team, okay, yeah, guys, you know, Buffalo sports fans can be a little bit fatalistic. Like, okay, when's the rug going to get pulled out from under us?
Of course.
Because we've experienced it a lot. This team's a little bit different. People are very confident and feeling comfortable enough to say, yeah, they can do this now. They can win the Super Bowl. All right, so it's Kansas City. All right, so you got to go to Kansas City and beat Mahomes. So it's not overconfident, and it's definitely excitement and happiness, Bob, that I haven't seen here in 30 years. But they're confident, not cocky.
Scott, the Cleveland Browns, on the other hand, came close, but no cigar. Well, how were you? Howard suggested I might be, or John did, fatalistic this morning after a close loss in a game they might have been able to win. How did you feel about it?
I feel, first of all, I'm grateful that they're not a disgrace and an embarrassment of an NFL team. I thought they were a fun team. This is, maybe sound a little bit lame, but it was all gravy yesterday. They beat the Steelers in the playoffs. And just for the record, I root for the Bills. Buffalo was one of only two franchises in the league to vote against the Browns moving to Baltimore in 1995. So, anything, I-90, that whole interstate thing, there's something of a fraternity there. But, as a Browns fan who was really estranged from the organization, I mean, to the point where I wouldn't even try to stream the games. I mean, I don't buy NFL packages. It was great. I'd say more than ever, not to get political at all, but at a time like this where sports really does provide a few hours of escape from some of the other stuff that's going on, seeing the Browns compete, play hard, and they beat themselves to some degree, but I mean, I'm not throwing any parades. I'm kind of sad because they lost. But to me, that's just a sign that the love remains, because for a few years there, Bob, I don't know about you, but for a few years, it wasn't even interesting enough to watch anymore.
It's a funny thing. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I got up from the couch periodically, as we all do during the game, wandered into the kitchen, grabbed something to drink or something to eat, and went back to the couch and sat down. And every time I went back and looked at the television again, there was this amazement that I'm looking at the uniform and it's January. And I mean, I got to think Bills fans feel exactly the same way as Browns fans did. It's just, look, there's that uniform that I know, and my expectation for so many years has been, I'm not going to see that after Christmas time.
Yeah.
Did you get that same sense at all?
I think for us, for Buffalo sports fans, this time of year, we're usually going and looking at the NHL standings, wondering if the Sabres might still be in the race.
Well, they are today, Howard, but maybe not for long.
4 games in. Yep. They're still alive.
No, there is definitely, it's we kept saying it today. It is mid-January and there's a Bills game Sunday. And there's a lot to be said about that, right? Normally you're in the off season. What are they doing with free agents? Hey, who should we draft this year? And to still sit here talking about football and expectations of even maybe doing it again next week, it's a wonderful place for Bills fans to be living in right now.
How frustrating is it to know that there's only supposed to be 7,000 people at Orchard Park?
Yeah, it's bittersweet. There's no question about it, guys. We were discussing it today. We were thinking about the play the other night, the pick six, the Taron Johnson interception return. I mean, if that place had 70,000 fans in it, it's an old structure. I'm not sure if it's still standing right now. So I do think about it every now and then. You wish everybody could have been there to enjoy it and for the players to feel what the fans were feeling and all that back and forth. It didn't happen. It's not going to happen. So you make the best of it. But honestly, having 6,700 fans in there the last couple games, I think has been fun. And it sounds like they've been really loud. I mean, Baltimore had 2 false starts with 10% capacity the other night. So the fans have been loud.
I thought the interesting thing about the Browns game, Scott, I'll throw it to you principally. The defense against Pittsburgh fell apart in the second half and allowed the Steelers to get back in the game. It did almost the same thing in the last game of the regular season against the Steelers. And they started like crap in the game against Kansas City. It looked like they weren't going to be able to stop them at all. And then suddenly they kind of came to life and kept them contained. But that's the area, I think, if you're a Browns fan, you're looking for them to improve next year, aren't you?
Yeah, I think if they can put the same kind of focus, through the draft, but also through hopefully intelligent free agent scouting and signing, that they can bolster the linebacker core. The way the league is set up now, and it makes perfect sense aesthetically and commercially, is that defenses are a step behind or more, almost literally, in terms of the contact rules. This has changed enormously, since those uniforms meant pride and the playoffs, the Browns uniforms. So yeah, I mean, KC's unstoppable. I mean, that's legitimate 14-2 defending Super Bowl champions. So the defense outside of all you could do was, from my point of view, get Nick Chubb as many touches as possible on offense, stay close, and try to get lucky, because the idea of stopping Kansas City is just, for any NFL team, but particularly that up and down, still young Browns defense, impossible.
Actually, you talked about Chubb. I was surprised they didn't run Hunt more early in the first half. I don't know Stefanski's game plan, but Kareem Hunt was, against Kansas City, he was possessed in the second half. I would have loved to have seen him more in the first half.
That's all year. I've had a hard time figuring out the pattern there. I mean, it's, again, I hate to judge it by Hugh Jackson 1-31. But I give Stefanski credit for creativity and vision, everything I can discern. I'm hardly an X's and O's guys, certainly not when it comes to football. But yeah, you've got Kareem Hunt against his former team. You've got Nick Chubb. Your O-line is iffy. Why aren't you running the ball 2 out of 3 times? I still can't fit. He had 13 carries for 69 yards, Chubb, but Hunt clearly was underused.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to go back to Jim Brown and Ernie Green in the backfield every Sunday, are we? As great as that was, it worked. They won a championship, their last one.
Different league.
It's a completely different game. And yet, a team that has shown an ability to run the ball and take time off the clock with the ground game, you wonder, are we moving back? Is there a sense that maybe we're going to see a little bit more of that than we are the pass? Howard?
No, not here.
Not in Buffalo.
No. I get that.
It's an afterthought here. There's no question. The other night, They ran one designed run call in the entire first half against the Ravens, and it came with 3 minutes left in the first half. And there were some Bills fans who were a little bit upset, maybe would have sprinkled a few more in, but there's no question the identity of the Bills offense is where the league has gone. It is, you have a quarterback, you have depth at wide receiver, you have multiple weapons, you throw the ball all over the place, and you try and outscore the opponent. I mean, that's what Kansas City does, and the Bills are now that team.
Although I will say, Howard, I was really impressed with the Kansas City defense yesterday. I thought they were, for all that talk about Mahomes and all the tools they have on the offensive side, I thought their defense was really, really good.
Well, I think, 2 years ago when they lost in the AFC Championship, their defense was pretty bad. I don't think they got enough credit. When you have an offense like that, maybe you don't get enough credit. They spent that offseason. They spent some money. They brought in some better players on defense, and they were much better last year, John. And they are still good. But I'll tell you this: I think in terms of from the Bills' perspective, they'd be hard pressed to be as good as Baltimore and Indianapolis defensively. I think the Bills, I don't mean this to come back and haunt me if the Bills end up losing and getting manhandled. I think the Bills have played their two toughest defensive opponents you could possibly have faced in the first two rounds of the playoffs. And I can't see, I know they got some good guys up front. They got Chris Jones, you got Frank Clark, you got Matthew on the back end. There's no question they're good players. Mm-hmm. I think as a group, I can't see how they could be as strong as what the Bills saw from the Colts and of course from the Ravens the other night.
One thing occurred to me before yesterday's game was the possibility of a Buffalo-Cleveland matchup in the AFC final. And I thought, how intriguing for me, especially a guy who's lived in Toronto, born in Ohio, a Browns fan all my life, but geographically linked to the Buffalo Bills, and two franchises that have been, for lack of a better term, completely and utterly inept for the better part of the last quarter of a century. And how intriguing to have those two kind of Rust Belt cities meet each other. But what would it actually have meant to fans in Cleveland, fans in Buffalo? Because that rivalry, well, it isn't even a rivalry, is it?
No.
People in Buffalo don't really care about the Browns, and people in Cleveland don't care about the Bills. And they're both AFC teams, but they don't meet very often. They're geographically close, but they're not in the same division. And so, well, who gives a flying fadoo, right?
Yeah.
Is that sort of how it works?
What, Scott?
Scott?
Well, they could have at least thought out Bob Costas to do the game. That's the upside. No, I do think of them as sister cities because of Interstate 90, because of the lineage of being, not just disrespected, but earning that disrespect. So I got nothing. The idea of that particular game, one step to the Super Bowl, Bills, Browns, that's a win-win proposition in my mind, probably not in the networks.
It's also intriguing. Yeah. Well, I'm sure. It's also intriguing that football is the only place where the two cities kind of cross over in terms of rivalry. Mm-hmm. Cleveland has a Major League Baseball team, but Buffalo doesn't.
They might again. They might have one for another year.
Well, Cleveland has a basketball team. Buffalo doesn't. So the only place where really that rivalry would be created is in football. Howard, your thoughts on what might have been?
Yeah, I think in large part, I think Bills fans would have been rooting for Cleveland because it would have been a home game for the Bills.
Right.
And to an extent, whether people are worried about Mahomes, whatever, they would have felt, to your earlier question about overconfident, maybe that might have been the case if they played Cleveland. I think Bills fans would have almost thought it's a lock. We're going to beat the Browns. It's a home game. We're going to the Super Bowl, because I think they would have felt that good about that matchup. But so I think that's why they would have rooted for Cleveland, just because home game, no Mahomes, count me in. But yeah, I mean, Scott's right. The idea of you would have had two of the top young quarterbacks playing in Allen versus Mahomes from the class of, or Allen versus Mayfield from the class of 18. Plus, as you noted, Bob, I mean, we're talking about two of the franchises that had two of the longest playoff droughts in the modern era of the National Football League, and meeting in the AFC Championship, the Bills for the first time in 27 years, and the Browns, it would have been the first time in what, like 31 or something like that. Would have been an amazing story. Maybe not nationally, but certainly in the two cities. I think there would have been an element of, kismet or something, that those two, franchises that have been down so long were playing for a shot in the Super Bowl.
The other thing is that I'm fascinated with the two coaches. And McDermott and Stefanski, to me, I guess they're newer, the new breed of coaches in the National Football League. And in many ways, they're very structured. But it's been 5 years now for Sean McDermott in Buffalo, Howard, and it has really changed a lot of the protocols and understanding of what the Bills do, just because we know who's in charge, right?
Oh, there's no question. Look, as you guys would know, as Bob and Scott can relate, during the many years in the Browns drought, a lot of time, they were churning through coaches and GMs, and people are talking about a dysfunctional organization and backstabbing and all the crazy stuff going on, and ownership, and same thing here with the Bills, and I think you now have, there's a stability. There is a clear message of how the franchise is structured, how it is run, what it does on a day-to-day basis, the expectations they have. There's a front office, quite honestly, guys, again, to make the comparison to being back there for the first time since the early 90s, it's the best coach GM combination around here since Marv Levy and Bill Polian. You have a football department that knows what they're doing. You have a head coach who's put together a very good staff, has really become a very good in-game coach as well, and has become the face of the franchise. Well, maybe the quarterback's the face of the franchise now, but there's an element of stability, hadn't been here, and belief in 30 years.
And ownership stays out of his way.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Well, I think ownership, it's really weird, the dichotomy, I guess, between the Bills and the Sabres. I think ownership trusts the Bills. I think ownership doesn't know what the heck is going on with their hockey team, and maybe they don't feel so good about the coaches and the GMs they've churned out. But ownership, the Pegulas know, we've got the football people in place. We're going to let them do their jobs, and there's a track record of them winning. So you guys go at it with the hockey team. Who knows what?
Scott, do you think Jimmy Haslam's done the same thing in Cleveland?
I think they've been ghastly owners. I just think they've been awful. I honestly do.
I agree.
It's amazing to me. And I've had to make the decision at different points. Once I'm convinced that the owners of a team care much less than I do and the fans I know about actually winning. And I don't think the Haslams have been ghastly in that sense. I think in the sense of absolutely not trusting their own hires, making extremely poor hires, both at GM and then as coach. I mean, it's really been terrible. They had promised the Haslams had promised to move to Cleveland. I don't even want to get it. It's such a rabbit hole for me, to have the billionaires from Tennessee who were part owners of the Steelers suddenly take over the Browns and make what was a shabby and inept team a total clown show for so many years. I just don't even want to get that upset about it. I just, and not to change the subject entirely, but I wanted to ask Howard, that quarterback class is fascinating as the seasons unfold. And all I remember, and no scout, no expert here, was that Josh Allen was kind of the bottom of the list, not because of the tools, far from it, but because you can't learn accuracy. Were you expecting, Howard, this quality of play from Josh Allen?
No, in fact, I can't change history. I didn't think it was a good draft pick. I watched his games at Wyoming. We watched every quarterback that year, each week. We would watch all their games every Saturday and then talk about each guy on Monday. And I was not impressed with Josh Allen at all. In fact, I was troubled that one, he didn't dominate a mid-major conference. Two, when they went up against Power 5 schools, he looked terrible. So I was not on board with that draft pick. So I was completely wrong. Thank goodness. But even this year, guys, no. I mean, you could tell last year he was obviously trending in the right direction. He was making a lot of strides. He had gotten a little bit more accurate, and he had looked like a better quarterback from year one to year two. Nobody saw the jump coming into year three. Nobody thought he goes from, where, hey, he's a good young quarterback. They made the playoffs too. He's in the MVP discussion. I don't think anybody would tell you they saw that coming. Certainly not outside of the Bills' offices.
Was there a watershed moment, Howard?
When they traded for Stefon Diggs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Watershed moment.
Great quarterbacks can make average receivers look great, but what I think you've discovered in Buffalo is the opposite can work too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, look, let's face it. There are some nice receivers here. Don't get me wrong. They bring in John Brown and Cole Beasley last year, and that helped make Josh Allen look better in year 2.
Yes, it did.
Then you go over the top. I mean, this is, I don't know, drafting Eichel, or I'm trying to think whatever compared. You bring in an elite, game-breaking wide receiver. So you couple that with Josh's progression going up, and then you bring in this guy, and it's created an unbelievable chemistry, and it's a dynamic that, again, hasn't been here in a long time.
And the one thing about Diggs is that not only can he run the long routes, but not afraid to go over the middle either. I mean, this guy does a little bit of everything, doesn't he?
You can't cover him. I mean, the best part of some of the best parts of watching Bills games are when they do ISO replays of Diggs and whoever he's lined up against. And I can't tell you guys how many times this season you'll see a cornerback fall down or just get beat cleanly off the line 5 yards down the field. His route running ability, yeah, I mean, the bombs will stick out and everybody remembers deep throws, but his route running ability, his ability to make contested catches, battles in traffic, go over the middle, you name it, this guy does it. And he and Josh are really the two big reasons why they've taken this offense to an unbelievably higher level.
What have you heard about Mahomes and his status for next week?
By the way, every Bills fan is hitting refresh on Twitter, waiting for the news on Mahomes. So
nothing. We were just actually we had to spend the morning researching concussion protocol rules in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing that we had heard new, only that, again, he can practice. He could be practicing this week this is not like the NHL. If you you guys can help me out here. 7 days symptom free. If not, you stay home, basically.
Right.
No, this is far from it. So he could be practicing this week and be listed as a participant, even though he's still in protocol. And then there are some reports that maybe it wasn't a concussion, maybe it was something different. So there's a lot of speculation out there, and there's nothing definitive at this point. But
it's not too simple, is it, guys? Scott, to you, it's not too simple to say if Mahomes plays, the Bills' chances of advancing to the Super Bowl are diminished significantly. This is not only a quarterback, a starting quarterback, he's a starting star quarterback.
He's a weapon outside of Lamar, at least, if not the best quarterback, pure quarterback in the NFL, in the top 2 or 3. It's a totally different game. Although I'm haunted by Chad Henne, but yes, it's an entirely different prospect facing Pat Mahomes.
Well, hold on, but I guarantee. I mean, I'd be shocked if Mahomes doesn't play on Sunday. Shocked.
Yeah, I would too. Again, and I think, look, every case is different, but it's not out of the question that a guy gets a concussion in the NFL and 7 days later he's suiting up. So I would be shocked too, John. I would assume he's going to play against the Bills. And again, sorry, Scott, but I would like their chances better against Chad Henne than Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is he's phenomenal.
Yes.
I don't know. I saw that scramble for that late first down. They almost got the first down. I'm going, oh my good, he may.
Don't make Scott feel any worse than he is. Yeah, I mean, it's just now you're rubbing it in, John.
No, hey, actually, when we talked about Diggs in Buffalo, though, this was, the Browns were a team that did all of this, and I love Jarvis Landry. He's one of my favorite receivers. But without Odell Beckham, what would Beckham have done for this team? Would we have been a difference maker, Scott, or is he just a pain in the butt?
I don't think he's a pain in the butt. He's a traditional, in many ways, NFL wideout. Over the past generation or so, the ones that are best are all perceived as pains in the butt. I do think they had a very hard time fitting chemistry with Baker. I have no idea, but when Beckham has been healthy, the chemistry, or literally the targets and catches, have not been there. Which is not to say I'm not hopeful that OBJ doesn't come back and everything cooks the same way it has in Buffalo. It's just I'm not sure. I'm not sure what would have made a difference yesterday. I do, I kind of wish the touchback rule was there. I have so many things I wish, but for a young team that nobody expected to get that far, I thought, they acquitted themselves well. I wish Higgins had just, you got to secure the ball. This isn't a goal line exception. This is like secure the ball and don't worry about the referee not calling the helmet hit. Now I'm getting upset again.
But actually, the NFL is famous for being very, well, I guess, reactive in this situation of not being afraid to change rules. Can you see helmet to helmet being reviewable?
I'm not sure. I'm troubled by many aspects of the game, as the NFL game as it is involved, and part of it is I'm getting old and soft. Our son is in his early 20s, so I tend to see these guys more as warriors who aren't simply two-dimensional objects anymore. I would like the NFL to continue punishing helmet first tackles because there just doesn't seem to be any other way to police that aspect of the game.
Well, and it's been a long time since I put football equipment on, but you get taught things in football. You don't start with a preconceived notion of what to do. You are taught how to tackle, how to do everything. And if you aren't teaching guys to keep their chin up when they hit rather than lower their head, then there's something inherently wrong there. And this rule has been in place long enough now that guys who did it differently in years past, most of them have filtered out of the game. So we're now dealing with a generation of guys who should know how to do this and it should be more instinctive. And we understand football's an instinctive game. It moves fast when it moves. There's lots of long periods where it doesn't do anything, but when it moves fast, and you've got to, a lot of it is instinct. But you got to teach these guys to keep their chins up and not lower their head when they hit. And we see it every game, every week throughout the course of the season. I dare say there hasn't been a game all year where I could definitively say I didn't see a guy lower his head and hit somebody. Can you?
Yeah, they don't call it as much as they said they were going. They put rules in place. So not just defensive players hitting offensive players or defensive receivers or whatever. They put in rules for, ball carriers. If you lower the crown of your helmet and you initiate contact, you're supposed to be flagged for it. And they just don't call that anymore.
We should take a second and get some prognostication.
Well, should we talk about the NFC?
We're going to, but we're going to first. I want to see. Is it even possible to prognosticate, not knowing whether Mahomes is going to play, or are we just going to assume he's going to play?
He's going to play, Bob.
All right. So Mahomes plays. Who do you like, Scott? First.
I can't go against the Chiefs. I just think even their running game yesterday was very impressive. I just think they're the right team with the experience and the coach. I think Andy Reid's a brilliant head coach.
Well, Simon.
Here's a shock. I'm actually going to take the Bills. And I've been on record for a couple of weeks now. They hit a point this season, guys, where it just went from, hey, they're going to win the division. Yeah, they can win a playoff game. They're with the best teams in the NFL. Their defense is playing the best it had all season. I know what we saw Saturday night. I don't think Kansas City's defense will be able to do what Baltimore's defense did. Allen's had a great year. There's a depth of weapons. Look, it's going to come down to this. I think it'll be a higher scoring game. Do the Bills have an offense that can outscore Kansas City? And normally that's not a good way to play the game, but I do believe they do. And, you can look at that first game here. They got run all over, but quite honestly, their game plan was you run the ball all night. We're just not going to let you throw it over our heads in the air. And it went to an extreme for Kansas City. I think they'll come up with a game plan to not give up 250 yards rushing, but also still prevent the big plays and keep this thing a one-score game or right there for the taking in the fourth quarter. And I think the Bills' offense will actually be the decisive factor.
So the AFC Championship game, two young quarterbacks who we've discussed. The extreme opposite on the other side in the NFC. Two guys on their way to the Hall of Fame. And maybe you can't argue which is better, but they're both good and they're both old. Which one do you like in that one, Mr. RAAB?
I'm not sure that I could say either team. I wish my familiarity with both. What I know about those teams boils down in large part to the quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I just think I'm fine. I'm fine with either one. If I had to bet, I would bet on the Packers simply because we got a younger guy and a more diverse offense from my point of view.
Simon?
Look, there is nobody in this world, I would hope, that would want to see the Bills play Tom Brady. Okay, I'm lying. There are actually good friends who would love. Here it is, guys. These are the things, as you know, the things you talk about in sports talk, right? So this is the revenge. The narrative is the Bills finally win a Super Bowl. Who do they beat to win the Super Bowl? They exercised 20 years of demons by beating Tom Brady to win the Super Bowl. I think there are a lot of Bills fans who want to see that. Now, if you guarantee me that when they get there, they'll beat Brady, I'll sign up right now, fellas. But there is no guarantee. And I got to tell you, the last guy in the world I'd want to lose a Super Bowl to is Tom Brady. Go Packers.
Tell you what, Tom Brady said yesterday, he admitted that he thinks his blood is thinner after playing in Tampa all year. So it's going to be 24 Fahrenheit degrees in Green Bay with snow flurries. Good. I think that this is a classic case of home field advantage for the Packers. And when you looked at all four games this weekend, when you looked at them, there's one team's offense that did almost anything it wanted to do at any time, and that was the Packers. I think, and by the way, I think it's Packers-Bills. And I think our friends at CBS are going to roll their eyes because it's two of the smallest TV markets, although the Packers do have a great following and so do the Bills. But Packers-Bills for me in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, we will find out in less than a week from today. Gentlemen, lovely to see you. Thanks so much for taking a few minutes for us. And with a little bit of luck, we'll invite you back and hopefully you'll join us again somewhere down the road. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Howard.
Thanks, guys. My pleasure.
For John Shannon, Bob McCowan, we'll see you on Wednesday on the podcast. Goodbye.